Hi, everyone. Happy New Year. I'm Rachel Siegel, the Director of Strategic Programs at Illuminate. Welcome to our Crown Jewel Conversation Series. Thank you for joining us from all over. Illuminate, as many of you know, is a catalyst for gender justice and social innovation. We invest in the leadership of Jewish women social entrepreneurs who are devoting their lives to tackling some of society's most pressing issues affecting women and other marginalized communities throughout the United States, Israel, and around the globe. Each year, we select 10 extraordinary Jewish women leaders. We call them our jewels, Jewish entrepreneurial women executives and leaders to take part in the collective. This cohort-based leadership advancement program encourages connections, partnerships, provides resources, and a curriculum that is tailored to meet their needs. This enables the leaders to maximize their impact. Our global network of changemakers is now 50 women strong. Illuminate is also dedicated to educating women philanthropists, as we are today, about emergent social issues and making impactful investments to support Jewish women leaders who are working for social change. Philanthropists of all financial capacities are welcome to participate, no matter where they are physically located. We believe that the integration of activism and philanthropy is essential to creating systemic change. When you support Illuminate, you not only support 50 organizations run by phenomenal women, you're part of a movement. Together, we are advancing a deeply feminist response to global social challenges and creating a bright future. Our conversation today will allow you to get to know one of the incredible women in this movement. Nina Smith currently serves as strategic advisor and was the founding chief executive officer of Goodweave International, the leading NGO working to stop child labor in global supply chains by bringing visibility to workers, restoring childhoods, and providing assurance to companies and consumers that select products with the Goodweave certification label are produced free from child labor. Under Nina's leadership, Goodweave pioneered a system that has restored freedom to more than 10,000 children. Nina has spoken extensively on this topic and has won many awards, including the Skoll Award for Social Entrepreneurship, the Schwab Foundation Award for Social Entrepreneurs, and the Center for Nonprofit Advancement's Excel Award for Excellence in Chief Executive Leadership. Nina sits on the boards of the Fair Labor Association and the Better Buying Institute. Please write any questions that you have for Nina in the chat, and we will do our best to incorporate them if time allows. To begin the conversation, I'm pleased to introduce the immediate past president of Illuminate, Rachel Weinstein.
Thank you, Rachel. Happy New Year to everyone, and Happy New Year to you, Nina. I remember the first time that I learned about you and your work and how incredibly impressed I was. And so I'm really so excited to have the opportunity to talk with you one-on-one today and dive deeper and learn more and share what you're doing with a wider audience. I'd love to hear how you became an advocate for human rights. What were the forces that brought you to this work?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you, Rachel, both Rachels, and everyone who's here on the in the discussion and the whole Illuminate Collective. So thank you so much for supporting me and inviting me to participate in the conversation. In answer to your question, which I do get asked from time to time, I always think about my grandmother, Helen Glick, who immigrated to the US from Poland to escape the pogroms, and she came over in 1912. And she was, first of all, very active in her synagogue and really focused on teaching her grandchildren, most of whom were granddaughters, about the premise of Tikkun Olam, and really, no matter no matter what circumstances she faced in her life, she always put money in her tzedakah box on Shabbat. She always donated money. She was active in a lot of causes. And really, she talked to us, her grandkids, about the importance of tzedakah and taught by example. And actually, I found out after she passed away that she was also a suffragette, which makes a lot of sense because she was a very strong woman. She ran the family business after my grandfather passed away, and she was really pretty progressive for her time. But importantly, I wanted to share something my grandmother and mother specifically exposed me to at quite a young age. When I was about 8 years old, they got me all dressed up, and it was really important to her that my hair was neatly braided, and said, we're taking you to talk to cousin Mark Weichman, and he's going to tell you a story, and don't ask too many questions. And my sister and I went with them to Mark's house. So Mark was my grandmother's first cousin, and while she had left Poland, he stayed behind, and by the age of 16 had survived 4 labor camps, and only survived through an amazing turn of events that I can't get into now. But after liberation, he was much younger than my grandmother, and she happened to track him down through an ad in the Jewish newspaper, found he had placed an ad looking for a family, and she brought him to the US to basically live as a sibling with my mother and her 2 brothers. So really had brought him here and helped him get his footing. And so anyway, we went to Mark's, and he told me the story of how he survived, and basically how he slowly turned into an animal, actually, in order to survive. And what were the things that he had to do to literally just literally to stay alive and nothing more. But he did come and heal, and he made it part of his life's work to continue to tell his story. His story was documented by the Shoah Foundation. And I will just say that day had a huge impact on me, because I guess what I learned was that what people face in life has a lot to do with where they were born, when they were born, what ethnicity they were born into. And it really struck me that what had happened to him could have happened to me, could happen to anyone. And I think that really has been, driving me through my career, that just awareness and empathy around with groups that aren't able to exercise their rights, particularly children.
Yeah, I think our persecution as a people certainly lends ourselves to sympathize and empathize with other peoples around the world. So I can imagine how impactful that was to you. So Goodweave works to combat exploitation of child labor around the globe. How did you become aware of that particular issue?
Well, I think it was about 1998 or 1999. I was reading an issue of Vanity Fair, actually. And there was this expose about this boy, Pakistani boy named Iqbal Masih. And Iqbal was a child slave in Pakistan. He was weaving carpets that were being made for export. He had escaped that servitude at the age of about 10 years old and became an activist with a Pakistani NGO called the Bonded Labor Liberation Front. I remember all the details of his story. And at the age of 12, he won the Reebok Human Rights Award. He traveled to the US. He traveled the country speaking to school children about his experience. And as the story continues, I learned the most shocking part, that when he went back home to Pakistan, he was murdered for his activism. It was a terrible, terrible story. And at the end of the story, there was a little blurb that said, there's this man named Kailash Satyarthi in India who's starting an organization to combat these circumstances. And I knew I wanted to get involved. And within a few weeks of reading that article, by pure coincidence, I met the people who were getting this initiative started with Kailash on the US side, and they offered me a job, and it was just sort of meant to be. And I'll just add that, that was, almost 25 years ago, but Kailash went on to become really the world's leading advocate on these issues, and he won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2014, the same year Malala did. So we came a long way, but back then, really, there wasn't a lot of knowledge, and for me, that particular article, it just goes to show how important awareness raising is. It really moved me to get involved.
Yeah. Although I don't believe it's a coincidence. I think we make our trajectory. And I imagine that you went after exactly what you knew you wanted, where you wanted to be, which has been an incredible match for you. So can you tell us a little bit about exactly what is the work that GoodWeave does to fight this issue?
Okay. Well, first, maybe I'll just say a little bit about like the scope and scale of the problem to
yes, please.
Those who don't know. So there are about 160 million children around the world. It's nearly 1 in 10 children that are in some form of child labor, and almost 5 million are victims of human trafficking, and many more, the worst forms of child labor. So I'm not talking about, kids working a newspaper route too early. This is really abusive situations these kids are in. They're completely robbed of their childhoods, including their education. And this situation perpetuates illiteracy, poverty, and additional human rights abuses, right? So it's really something that underlies so many of the issues that those of us within Illuminate are working on. And it's also illegal. So almost in every country around the world. The US Department of Labor has documented, I want to say, something like 59 industries in 78 countries that involve child or forced labor. And that's why to address the problem, we need to work with the private sector on solutions. So GoodWeave has what we call a market-based model, a holistic market-based model, where we establish corporate partnerships to drive change into vulnerable worker communities. So when companies sign up with GoodWeave, their exporters in South Asia also become affiliated, and all parties agree to allow GoodWeave as a third-party independent actor to access, to document, investigate their supply chains where their goods are made, ensuring that the manufacturers are in compliance with a whole range of labor rights requirements, especially around child labor and forced labor. And this is really important, this being to really get to the full supply chain, because while most people, including even importers and retail buyers, think their goods are made in a particular factory, they often aren't. And that factory will subcontract out the work, and then there are more subcontractors for there. And very quickly, the supply chains become complicated and opaque. Companies aren't able to do a good job of monitoring, even if they're trying, what's going on. And often the work gets into, home-based, very vulnerable communities where people are exploited to make goods cheaply. So our model, essentially, through the work of incredible colleagues that are on the ground, proximate to the work, to the communities, they bring visibility to all the production. They do what we call mapping the supply chain. So they find each and every place where the products are being made, and they apply labor rights standards in all of those locations. And ultimately, producers are deterred from employing child labor because they don't want to get caught and lose their business, because their buyers are saying, we want you to do this. We want assurance that no child labor is being used. And we've seen that that's the case. So we say there's a business case to do the right thing. But we do find child labor, as you referenced in the introduction. And when we do find child labor, we work individually with that child and their family to ensure remedy, which can come in the form of counseling, near and long-term support around education, and other kinds of things that the child and family may need. And finally, we address the root causes of child labor. So in addition to the other elements I talked about, we have programming across the worker communities that touch the supply chains of the companies we work with, right? And this is around ensuring children are in school, that adults are ensured decent work, and also have access to critical services. So ultimately, the companies that comply, that fully participate in the program, whose producers comply with the requirements that Good Weave lays out, they earn the right to get the Good Weave certification that is sort of the visible manifestation of the work that we do. And our certified products can be found in, major stores like Macy's, Restoration Hardware. Banana Republic just launched a home goods line with Good Weave certification on the products. And, as well as high-end design showrooms and online retailers. So that's kind of the heart of the work that we do. And I would just add that, we are always looking at how we can multiply the impact. The work I just described, it's both systems change. We're changing the way companies do business. We're changing the way communities view these issues, just working all the way across the supply chain, across the systems, but also it's one-on-one work, right? Helping individuals that are caught up in these problems. So what we want to be able to do is also multiply the impact that we're having. And so we're involved in advocacy, so advocating for laws that will hold companies accountable for labor rights abuses, and also uphold the rights of children in the production countries, India, Nepal, Bangladesh. I'll talk a little more maybe later about some of the places we work, but there have to be strong laws that ensure children's rights to an education. So we work on the advocacy. We also share our expertise with other NGOs, with companies, with governments, through a range of projects. So most of our work traditionally has been in carpet and home textile industries, and we've grown and expanded into apparel and fashion accessories. And we have had projects in tea plantations and brick kilns, sugar mills, India, Nepal, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and there are more projects in the pipeline. So, we really think that this sort of innovation and collaboration is really important to spread best practices across the field.
It's amazing. And though for those who are listening, just to clarify what Nina was saying, that literally this certification that Good Weave offers, you can find right on the back of a rug or on a label for a pillow, so that you can know that that supply chain has been protected, as it were. You say that there are laws in all these countries against this. How is it still happening? I mean, what are the circumstances that enable companies to do this? And yeah,
I mean, it's complex. I mean, yes, there are laws. So in the countries that I mentioned, and especially India, there are very good laws, but often the labor ministries aren't capacitated to go out and check. So they aren't enforcing the laws. So there's a lack of law enforcement. There's a lack of education infrastructure. There's deep-seated racism against lower caste communities. So there's all of these things that are going on, and there's even beliefs within these communities that, for example, girls shouldn't go to school and they should stay at home and work alongside their mother. So we're really up against, sort of like governments, bad actors, companies, traffickers, but also belief systems in these countries. So, that's part of it. And there's just a lot of extreme poverty. And, you know, most of the families that are in these circumstances, they aren't faced with a choice, really.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like economic leverage has been a really successful tool for you to hold companies accountable. Can you talk a little bit more about some of the other impacts you've had in terms of laws, or I don't know if companies have been prosecuted for when they have been violating these laws?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, just a few points. You know, when we started, there weren't terms like corporate social responsibility, and actually, you know, the policy environment has changed radically, and we couldn't get a single company to talk to us in the beginning. You know, why do we need you? We don't have a problem. There's no such thing as child labor. You know, we heard everything. But today we collaborate with 450 companies in 22 countries. So just changing the practices of those companies and the influence that those companies have within their industries is huge. It's a huge shift that's happened. You know, legislatively, I would say starting about 2010, there have been laws coming online all over the world around eradicating modern slavery, around corporate due diligence. So the EU has just passed a very important law on human rights due diligence that is a mandatory, requiring companies to demonstrate how they are upholding human rights in the sourcing of their goods and services, and the onus is becoming more and more on the company to prove it. So interestingly, the U.S. has a very strong forced labor ban that has in recent years really been enforced. It's enforced by U.S. Customs and Border Protection. And we actually had to help a company that we work with. Their goods were stopped by U.S. Customs. Their products were seized. This is a huge business incentive for companies to do something, because when their products are seized at the border, they can't function, they lose clients, they get a bad reputation. It's very risky. This particular company approached us and said, what is going on? And we knew the people in customs and were able to launch a process that was actually an onerous 9-month process for that company. But in the end, the documentation that we were able to provide to that company enabled them to ultimately get what's called a modification. It's not easy to get a modification, but we were able to prove that they didn't have forced labor, including child trafficking, in their supply chain. So, you know, those are some of the kind of big pictures that are going on, big picture things that are happening. And, you know, there's been a lot of impact in those regions and industries as well. I mean, I find it interesting. On one hand, it's frustrating because when you get successful with the work, then it's copied and others crowd in. I think many of us experience that in our work. Even though it's an annoyance, it's also a good thing, because, you know, there's sort of more, maybe we're a carrot and there's more and more, you know, players piling in and working on these issues. So, yeah, I mean, I can share statistics of numbers of people served, but I think really changing the operating environment, which is what's most important.
Right. Like, what is it they say? That imitation is the highest form of flattery, right? That it's really important, though, that everyone, because certainly, probably, you know, you're dealing with a large fraction, but a fraction of what's going on out there. So, I hope everyone can learn from your best practices for sure. How do you find the companies that you partner with, or how do they find you? I mean, how do you go about?
Yeah, we have a team, a business development team, and I mean, back in the day, we go to trade shows. We still do, for especially carpets and home textile trade shows, and we have a booth. And our business team is there, very professional. I mean, it's really interesting because our NGO is sort of a hybrid business NGO. We have to be business savvy and be able to talk to business people and work within the industry. So, yeah, we map out who are the big players. who are the big importers of the goods, and we contact them and, you know, start building relationships. It can take years and years before they say, yes, I want to work with you. But that's an ongoing function inside of the organization, is that business development work. And, you know, in this month, the team will be in Germany at the largest flooring show in the world, and there'll be a booth for GoodWeave, and you know, a lot of clients will be met and signed as a result of that. And that's, you know, there are several shows across the year, and just regular work the team is doing. And I would say that to retain, we have very high retention. So once a company starts working with GoodWeave, they continue to work with GoodWeave and really kind of see the benefits long term. So the business team is always, there's a lot of kind of joint communication and promotion that gets done together with those partners.
You know, and one more question regarding sort of like your operations. So how does it, like, do you operate through donations? Are the companies also paying you for your services? How does that work?
Yeah, it's a great question. So about 20% of the total organizational budget is fees paid by companies. So they pay what's called a license fee, and the fee is levied based on their import volume of the goods that are certified. And you know, a lot of the rest of the budget comes from government grants, private grants, individual donations. All of it's important. It's very important to be diversified in our revenue. And a lot of the sort of the bigger grants are really covering new work. So that core certification work, it's not totally self-sustaining, but you know, it's pretty self-sustained. And then, you know, for us to be able to grow and work in new ways, you know, the grants cover that. So yeah.
Yeah, great. So you alluded to this a little bit earlier, but you're working in so many different countries. What are some of the unique challenges that you've faced in working in the parts of the world that you've been working?
Well, I guess I want to start by saying I have a lot of friends in these countries and amazing colleagues. Like, I mean, these are the best people I've known in my life. I've had 25-year committed you know, working relationships. And so I want to start by saying that. I mean, the work doesn't get done without the incredible people that work with GoodWeave in India and Nepal, and also in some of the newer countries where we're operating. Yeah, we talked about some of those challenges earlier. I mean, I think the biggest challenges are these sort of systemic issues around poverty, you know, lack of education, discrimination. These are some of the big challenges, lack of law enforcement. Yeah, I think those are really, you know, the biggest things. I mean, I could say, yeah, as a woman going there and working in the old days, you know, it's particularly hard. There's absolutely, you know, I think gender bias and those kinds of things at play as well.
So I want to invite people to put questions in the chat if they have them, and there was one that disappeared, but I guess, do you, as part of the work that you're doing, are you also, you said there's a lot of education, and there's a lot of education of the individuals. Are you also training the companies about their actions, the impact of their actions, all of that as well?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that sort of capacity building with the companies is a continual piece of what we do. And it happens at many levels. It happens at the enterprise level where goods are being made, literally educating the manufacturers, whether they're small workshops or bigger factories, about what are the legal requirements, what are the requirements of our standards, which are not, they're at least the national, aligned with national laws, but sometimes go beyond. but also what does good recruitment practice look like, or how to do a better job of tracking and paying wages, helping the buyers understand. We've been doing studies on wages, and how does the piece rate that a lot of these workers earn relate to minimum wage or living wage, even better. So there's a range of work that we do. And interestingly, a lot of the companies, let's say in the buying countries, don't even know where their goods are made half the time. So a big part of the education process is really showing them, like, this is your supply chain map today. You thought you had 5 exporters sending you products, and actually there are 800 production sites, and that's like a real thing. It looks like that. So really helping them see what the ground scenario really is, and helping them understand how they can ensure good practices across that complex supply chain. So it's really a continual thing. Every company, yeah, well, I'll stop there. Yeah.
How do you choose what sectors to be in? Like, for example, you said, like the carpeting and flooring you were in, and then you were segueing to fabric. I mean, there are so many items, gift items, all that are made overseas in these kinds of countries. How do you decide which sector to go into?
Yeah, well, when Kailash first started, he selected the handmade carpet industry. That was in India, and the reason being that there was a high prevalence of child labor. It was an export product where we knew there was a kind of market lever to help change the situation, and we were able to sort of align the different kinds of partners that we needed to get in place to be able to have impact. So it's really a mix of, is there a viable operating environment? Is there the problem? Number one, we're very mission focused. We wouldn't be doing it if we couldn't have a real impact on the problem. So that's always number one. And then it's looking at, where does our expertise lend itself? Where do we think we can really get traction and do something big and important? And always when we're doing something new, we have to consider whether we'll be able to get funds to support it. So to some degree, it will be dictated by that as well. Like, what are some of the government and private funders really interested in right now? And as we expanded into working in fashion and apparel, that was only possible because of some very generous donors who put in the kind of significant and patient capital to be able to get started and then grow up the programming.
Yeah, and just to clarify, because someone asked in the chat, the work that you're doing enables the big chains like the Bloomingdale's and the Macy's and the Dillard, like, to be able to verify that they are then responsibly buying as well.
Exactly. Yes, that's exactly right. They get reports, and so for example, if you go on the Macy's website and Google Goodweave, I'm sure you'll find in their statements a description of their work with us, because actually by law, because of their work, the state of California has a Supply Chain Transparency Act that many have tried to bring national. And as such, they have to report on what they're doing to address modern slavery. So they'll talk about us in that statement. Yes, so we're actively working with them.
Great. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about you, because after 25 years as the founding CEO of this organization, you have just recently stepped down, and congratulations to you. So exciting. And
Yes.
I mean, it's clear that you've chosen to devote your life to human rights advocacy, and I'm really curious about what you're thinking about next.
Well, that's a hard question, Rachel, because I really, so I've been working on this leadership transition in some way, shape, or form for probably about 1.5 years, and really wanted to be purposeful and have that be an extremely successful process. So I had decided at the outset that I needed to stay focused on what I was doing and put everything into that, number one. And number two, that after all of these years, I don't think I could possibly know exactly what I'm going to do next. I need to kind of take a step back. So I will be doing that. I'll be taking a little bit of a break, not a very long break, but you know, I want to take a break before I'll come back out and say, this is what I'm doing. But I can imagine for sure, I want to be able to leverage what I know. And I have some thoughts about how I might do that. I certainly have a bit of writing I want to do that I think can help influence, you know, the policy environment a little bit around these issues. But I want to take a little break, and I will be doing that in the month of January. I'll be taking a full break in January, and I'm fortunate enough to be supported by one of our donors to participate in a 18-month program called the Wellbeing Project. And it will start off this month with a week-long retreat. And so I'm pretty excited about that. I think just once I can step back, I'll be able to kind of recalibrate and figure out what's next.
Well, and I think that makes sense, right? They say you should at least say no to everything for 6 months after a big change like this, so that you can really let yourself kind of, you know, settle into what you really want to do. And you know, you and I talked about this a little when we chatted the other day, but I think especially here in the US, so much of our identity is wrapped up in what we do professionally. And so the opportunity to have this 18 months, can you tell us a little bit more about what the Wellbeing Project does and how that supports you?
Yeah, and it's far from full time. It'll be a very small amount of time invested, but yeah, the idea is that they want to support social sector leaders to be able to take care of themselves, to be able to go out in the world and be their best selves as leaders, you know. And I actually don't know all that it entails, but they have this curriculum with a sort of you know, with a faculty of interdisciplinary people that are going to be working with us through these retreats, through sort of cohort work. There's a cohort, I think 10 people will be involved in the next 18 months together. So we'll be a tight-knit group, much like the cohort 4 that I'm in with Illuminate, and working together on you know, who we are. I heard one of the modules of their curriculum is called Understanding Your Personal Myth. So I think it's really like, it's deep personal work. It's not about being a leader. It's not about your profession. It's really about, you know, understanding yourself in ways that then enable you to be both true to yourself and impactful in the way that you are in the world. So that's my best trying.
You know, it sounds incredible. I mean, how often do we have the time and the luxury to do that when we're in the full-time rat race that is our lives? So, I mean, it really does sound like a gift in so many ways.
Yes.
And as you brought it up, it's a perfect segue into the collective. And you know, I'm really interested to hear, how has the collective impacted your leadership during this sort of critical time, you know, in terms of planning for your succession? And what have the relationships that you have found there, how have they supported you, or how have you leveraged them either in that work or in planning this succession?
Oh, well, there's lots of things to say about that. And I'll just say that from the beginning, when our cohort first met, I was talking about my transition. So it was really in the beginning. And first and foremost, the group of women that, you know, I'm in contact with regularly, I've been able to share how it's going, get feedback and support. So it's been a very supportive environment. And obviously also Ruth Messenger has a lot of experience to bring to bear. So I just really felt like I had a lot of support through because it's not easy to make this kind of a decision and then go through all the steps. So that was really, really great. I received, so as a part of the, being part of the collective, there's a pot of money for professional support, and I was able to use the funds to pay an executive coach who has expertise on leadership transitions. And so that was fantastic. I mean, she helped me. I got so much wisdom from her because, you know, you can often feel sort of alone in this, but she brought the wisdom of a whole body of kind of literature and knowledge out there about transitions, and was able to kind of show me literally sometimes on a graph, like, this is where you are in your journey, and this is what it usually feels like for people to be this place in their journey. Or, you know, just help me stay true to the intention I set at the very beginning of this process, that I just wanted it to be successful and for everyone involved across the organization, and, you know, from board to beneficiaries to staff, to also experience it as something positive and successful, because we all know that these kinds of transitions aren't always, and I believe we achieve that. So I think having that support from my coach was really essential. So I think those are some of the main ways. Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I wish you the best of luck as you sort of figure out your path. We're thrilled to have you here, and you know, at Illuminate, we are always investing in our leaders in the work that they're doing, but in them as people knowing that they're going to continue to be social justice warriors through the world and the way that they move through it every day. So thank you so much for chatting with me today. I'm going to invite Rachel Siegel back on to sort of close us out.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Nina, for taking the time to be with us and sharing your wisdom and your story with us, and really educating us about the widespread nature of child labor and all of its different effects. You know, I learned so much, so thank you. Thank you, as always, Rachel, for leading us through this conversation. We hope that you will, as Nina shared, visit goodweave.org to learn more about their ongoing work and to find out where to purchase child labor-free products. Please also sign up for Illuminate's newsletter to hear more about events and updates such as this one. We hope you'll join us for our next Crown Jewel conversation on February 1st at 12 o'clock noon Eastern with Donna Talmy, Executive Director of Yahel Israel Service Learning. We offer these sessions at no cost to you, but if you find value in what we're doing, we hope that you'll consider making 2 donations today. The first one to Goodweave International to support the work that Nina and her team are doing, and another to Illuminate. Thank you for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you very soon.